Hello there. I'm glad you're settling in. Are you comfortable tonight? Maybe you've dimmed the lights or tucked yourself under a warm blanket, letting the quiet of the evening gather around you. It's a good moment to drift into a calm story, one that wanders through time with a gentle pace, a soft voice, and a sense of wonder about the people who came long before us. If you're ready, let's step together into a world lit by torches and pale moonlight, a world where the rhythm of life slowed after sundown, and where the mysteries of sickness and survival blended with the routines of duty. We'll let the larger theme of smallpox, why it was so deadly, how it shaped civilizations, how it haunted families, flow in the background, like a distant wind that occasionally sweeps through our path. And at the same time, we will walk beside the figures who guarded medieval castles at night, hearing their quiet thoughts, feeling their presence against the cold stone walls, and understanding how their nightly work helped shape the lives sheltered within those walls. Imagine a medieval castle settled on a rise of land, its silhouette outlined by the last traces of daylight. The sky deepens into a blue that is almost black, a vast bowl sprinkled with stars that seem sharper and more numerous than the ones most of us see today. Torches flicker along the ramparts, their flames sway in the restless breeze, pushing back the darkness just enough to reveal worn paths of stone, damp from the evening air. The scent of smoke clings everywhere, mingling with the earthy smell of the surrounding forests. You can almost hear a distant owl or the rustling of unseen creatures in the grass beyond the walls. Within the castle's interior, villagers and nobles alike settle into their chambers or huts, each carrying their own private fears and hopes to bed. But for the guards, the night is not for sleep. It is a time of focused vigilance and quiet labor. The quiet is deceptive. Danger does not announce itself with heavy footsteps. A single figure moving in the shadows beyond the moat might be a scout or an assassin. A strange glimmer near the outer gate might be a reflection or a threat. And behind every moment of tension is a deeper fear, one that no sword or shield can fend off entirely, the fear of sickness. In the medieval world, plagues travelled through darkness as readily as armies did. Smallpox, especially, lingered like a silent spectre, able to breach castle walls far more easily than any band of raiders. Tonight, let us follow one of the guards. His name isn't written in any chronicle, but you might picture him as a man in his early 30s, shoulders broad from years of wearing armor, though his armor at the moment is lighter than what he'd worn in battle. Leather rather than metal. It is too taxing to patrol stone walls for hours weighted down by steel. His boots scuff quietly as he walks the length of the wall, occasionally pausing to look out over the landscape. Each time he stops, he listens, not just for danger, but for the subtle shifts of the living world at night. He knows, as all guards know, that the castle's strength is measured not just by its walls, but by the attentiveness of those who watch over it. A single lapse, a moment of sleepiness or distraction, could invite disaster. Yet if we could slip into his thoughts, we'd find that he thinks just as much about illness as he does about enemies. He has seen smallpox ravage nearby villages. He has watched travellers arrive at the gate with scars on their faces, those deep pockmarks that tell their own painful history. Sometimes he wonders whether the castle's inhabitants truly appreciate how vulnerable they are. They fear invading armies far more than invisible contagions, but he knows that the smallest cough can carry more danger than a sharp blade. As he walks, he glances toward the lower courtyard, where earlier in the day a sick child had been brought for evaluation by the castle's healer. No one knows yet whether the child's fever is the ordinary kind that passes in a few days, or something far worse. The possibility of smallpox hangs over the situation like a dark shroud. Once it enters a confined place like a castle, it spreads with merciless speed, especially among those who have never been exposed before. The guard remembers the last time an outbreak swept through the region. The dead were so numerous the burial grounds struggled to hold them. Even the wealthy could do little, but isolate themselves and hope for mercy. Yet tonight, on the wall, he pushes these worries aside in favor of the immediate tasks before him. He descends a narrow stairway and steps into the courtyard. A couple of other guards warm their hands near a brazier, its coals glowing red and steady. They nod to him with the quiet camaraderie of people who rely on one another in uncertain times. Their conversations drift softly, touching on mundane things, how a new litter of puppies has appeared in the stables, or how the baker has begun experimenting with a slightly sweeter dough. These small topics help them endure the long hours and keep the shadow of fear at bay. Still, underneath the light talk, everyone remembers the stories told by older soldiers of nights when raiders scaled the walls using ropes, appearing like ghosts above the battlements, of traitors within the castle unlocking gates under cover of darkness, of vicious storms that forced guards to cling to parapets as wind threatened to fling them into the moat. No one forgets that exhaustion is as dangerous as any intruder. The rhythm of the night must be carefully maintained, with guards rotating regularly, allowing each person moments to rest, to warm themselves, to drink a bit of watered wine or chew on leftover bread. Otherwise, minds slip, and with that slip comes peril. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. The sound rolls across the fields and forests as though carried on its own breath. The guard lifts his head slightly at the sound. Wolves rarely come close to the castle, but hearing them always stirs something ancient in the human heart. It reminds him that the world beyond the walls is both vast and indifferent, a wilderness full of creatures whose lives follow patterns untouched by human worry. He feels for a moment the strange contrast between the quiet beauty of the night and the fragile life within the castle walls, where disease and hunger and war constantly reshape existence. As he continues his patrol, he pauses near one of the small guard towers. Inside, a young guard, newly appointed, barely past 18, sits with a cloak pulled tightly around him. The wind has found every crack in the stone tower, weaving its way through like an unwelcome visitor. The older guard steps inside for a moment to check on him. The young man looks up, grateful for the brief company. His cheeks are flushed from cold, but his eyes show the alertness of someone unaccustomed to long night shifts. He asks a few quiet questions about signs to watch for, how often to pee beyond the torch's glow, how to remain awake when the hours begin to blur. The older guard answers calmly, sharing little tips passed down through countless nights. Listen more than you look. Let the tempo of walking keep you alert. Trust the rhythm of your breathing to anchor you. The talk eventually turns, as it often does, to illness. The young guard mentions that someone in the nearby village has fallen sick with a high fever. The older guard feels a familiar chill unrelated to the cold air. He explains that fever appear for many reasons, and only some are signs of smallpox, yet the anxiety lingers all the same. Smallpox does not care about walls or ranks or prayers, it visits rich and poor alike. And before the concept of immunity was understood, each outbreak was a terrifying mystery, with people grasping at superstitions or rituals in the hope of protection. The torch's outside gutter for a moment in a sudden gust, sending tiny sparks drifting into the night. The older guard steps out again, gently closing the wooden door behind him. He resumes his circuit, the familiar path feeling almost comforting beneath his feet. Somewhere above, clouds shift, revealing the full moon. Its pale light spills across the fields, turning the world silver. In that glow, he can see the faint outline of the distant road, the one traders and travelers use when approaching the castle. Tonight it lies still, as empty as a dried riverbed. He thinks again of the small child brought to the healer earlier. The castle has been fortunate the past few years, spared from major outbreaks. But fortune is fickle. If the illness is smallpox, the quiet routines of the castle will soon be shattered. The guard remembers how quickly the disease spreads, how even touching the wrong blanket or breathing too near the infected can ignite a chain reaction. He knows, perhaps better than many, That disease has shaped kingdoms as surely as war. Entire villages have been abandoned after outbreaks. Armies have been weakened mid-campaign. Succession lines have faltered because heirs did not survive childhood. Yet tonight, all is still. The air is cold and sharp. The moon is bright. The castle sleeps. And the guard continues his walk, step after steady step, a sentinel between peace and danger. The guard moves along the wall again, keeping his hands near his cloak so the cold does not make his fingers stiff. He has learned that stiff hands slow reactions, and even during quiet nights it is better to stay ready. As he walks, he feels the rough stone under his palm when he brushes the wall for balance. The stone holds the cool of the night and carries a faint smell of lichen. It is a small detail, but it is part of the routine of night patrol. Every part of the castle has its own smell, its own feel, and after years of walking the same paths, the guard knows them all in a quiet, steady way. Below him, the courtyard is dim, but not completely dark. A few lamps burn near the stable, where a sleepy stable boy dozes against a bale of hay. The horses shift in their stalls from time to time, their hooves scraping the floor. They know the pattern of the night too. Most of them settle after sunset and wake before dawn. Only when a messenger arrives late or a rider leaves early do the animals break their usual rest. The guard glances toward the small door leading to the healer's room. The room has only a faint light through the shutters now. Earlier, there had been more movement there, and voices had risen and fallen with tension. When a fever enters a castle community, even if it turns out to be nothing serious, people worry. Life inside castle walls depends on close cooperation. Everyone touches the same tools, shares the same cooking areas, breathes the same air in crowded halls during winter. Illness does not stay isolated for long. He remembers how the healer explained smallpox during the last outbreak. The healer had seen it many times. He said the sickness often begins with fever, back pain, and tiredness that feels heavier than normal. People often think it is a harmless illness at first, but then the rash appears, starting on the face and spreading across the body. At that point, panic often grows because everyone knows the rash can mean the sickness is no longer mild. The guard has heard stories from older villagers of families closing themselves inside their homes when the rash showed, hoping the sickness would pass quickly. Sometimes it did, sometimes it did not. But tonight the courtyard is quiet. A guard near the gate adjusts the belt around his waist and yawns. Another checks the chain of the outer drawbridge winch. These tasks must be done even when everyone is tired. Heavy equipment like the drawbridge can become a weakness if neglected. Ropes rot, chains rust, and wood splits in damp weather. The guard knows that enemies often wait for signs of weakness, but sometimes weather alone causes trouble. A damaged winch during a storm could trap people outside or inside at the wrong moment. He walks past the tower again, making sure the young guard inside is still alert. The young man now stands rather than sits, trying to keep himself awake. His posture is stiff, but his eyes stay open, scanning the outer grounds. It takes time to learn how to stay awake during the quietest hours of the night. Most new guards struggle during the time just before dawn, when the body naturally wants rest. Older guards teach the younger ones to change posture often, and to focus their attention on small movements in the environment. The older guard continues across the wall walk until he reaches the northeast corner tower. This tower overlooks a patch of farmland outside the castle. During the day, it is a busy area with farmers moving tools, tending animals, and checking their storage huts. At night, though, it looks still and empty. Only faint shapes can be seen, fences, low sheds, and the darker outline of the woods beyond. The moon helps tonight, making the landscape clear enough to observe. The guard rests his hand on the railing and takes a slow breath. The air here is cleaner than down in the courtyard. It carries the scent of soil and distant trees. It also carries sound well. When the wind is right, the guard can hear animals moving through the grass, or even the soft crack of a twig when a deer passes through. Such sounds help break the monotony of the long hours. His thoughts drift again to illness. It is hard not to think about it, especially when the castle community depends so much on shared labor. When one person becomes sick, others must cover their duties, which pushes them closer to exhaustion. Exhaustion weakens the body, and a weakened body falls ill more easily. The guard has lost friends to sickness before, and he remembers each loss in a practical, steady way, not with dramatic emotion, but with the clear awareness that he lives in a time when even small infections can become fatal. The castle healer understands more than most people, but even he cannot cure smallpox. He can treat fever with simple herbs, keep the patient warm, and prevent dehydration by giving broths or water. He can try to ease pain with certain leaves or roots. But none of these stop the sickness itself. Some people survive because their bodies fight it off. Others do not. The healer once said that some people who survive become protected afterward. Though he does not know why, they sometimes care for the sick without falling ill again. But this knowledge is uncertain, and people do not rely on it with confidence. The guard watches the farmland for a while longer before continuing his patrol. Another guard approaches him from the opposite direction. They quietly exchange a few words about anything unusual they may have seen. Tonight, neither has observed anything of concern. The other guard mentions that he heard the healer's assistant carrying warm water earlier, so the fevered child must still need care. They both hope the fever will break by morning. As the night deepens, the wind grows colder. A thin layer of frost begins to form on the exposed stone surfaces. The guard rubs his hands together and picks up his pace slightly to stay warm. While walking, he thinks about how different the castle feels at night compared to the day. During the day, the main gate sees constant movement. Farmers bring produce, merchants arrive with goods, and travelers seek shelter. Children run through the courtyard, and workers hammer wood, repair tools, or shape metal. At night, however, the castle feels like a different world. Only the guards, some servants, and a few restless souls remain awake. The quiet allows every sound to stand out clearly. He hears footsteps ahead before he sees the source. A fellow guard descends from the main wall walk and nods a greeting. This guard has been checking the interior rooms to ensure no fires remain burning where they should not. Accidental fires are as dangerous as enemy attacks. Most of the castle's buildings are made of wood. Only the main keep is mostly stone, but even it has wooden floors, furniture, and storage spaces. A single spark can cause trouble. For that reason, guards make rounds inside as well as outside. The two exchange brief updates. The interior seems safe. A few servants are still awake in the kitchen, preparing dough for morning bread. They work late so fresh bread can be ready as soon as the castle wakes. The warmth from the kitchen ovens usually spreads through the lower rooms of the keep, making it a popular place for sleepy servants to linger on cold nights. Tonight, though, the servants work quickly and quietly. News of the sick child has made everyone uneasy. The guard continues his path and reaches the area near the main gate. The gate guards keep a small fire burning in a metal brazier. They stand close to it, turning from time to time so the heat warms their front and back evenly. One of them holds a long spear. The other rests his hand on the hilt of his sword. They are not expecting trouble, but they must remain ready in case a traveler arrives. Sometimes messengers ride through the night. Sometimes villagers seek shelter from danger or wild animals. Most travelers at this hour have urgent reasons to approach a castle. The guard asks the gate guards if they have seen anything. They shake their heads. The road has been empty since sunset. One of them mentions that he heard from the healer's assistant that the child's fever rose again. This makes the guard uneasy. He keeps his reaction controlled, but inwardly he begins preparing for the possibility of confinement measures. If the healer believes the fever might be smallpox, he will ask the lord of the castle to restrict movement inside the walls. Visitors will be turned away. The gates will stay closed except for emergencies. Rooms will be set aside to isolate the sick. People will avoid gatherings, and tasks will be rearranged so workers do not cluster together. The guard knows that isolation is one of the few effective ways to slow the spread of disease. Even without understanding the exact cause, people have learned through experience that staying apart helps. Still, isolation inside a castle is difficult. Space is limited. Families share close rooms. Workers share tools. The guard remembers one winter when an illness spread so quickly that nearly half the castle staff was sick at the same time. Food became scarce because few people were healthy enough to prepare it. Horses went unfed for long hours. The defenders grew weak. It was one of the hardest seasons he has witnessed. He moves on, knowing that worrying does not stop illness. He focuses again on the work at hand. He climbs another set of stairs and resumes his position on the walk above the gate. From there, he can see both the interior courtyard and the landscape outside. The torches below cast long, shifting shadows across the ground. The moonlight brightens the fields beyond. The guard listens closely, picking out small sounds. The clinking of metal as a guard shifts position, the distant hoot of an owl, the occasional murmur of servants walking between buildings. He thinks about how many nights he has spent this way, years of walking these same stones, hearing the same sounds, watching for signs of danger. But he does not resent the routine. It gives his life shape and meaning. The castle relies on guards like him. Without their steady work, people inside would sleep less peacefully, even if nothing happens most nights. The presence of watchful guards creates safety. He pauses for a moment, stretching his shoulders to keep them from getting stiff. It is important for guards to move slowly and deliberately. Sudden motions attract attention and create noise. A quiet guard is a good guard. Noise can mask important sounds. The guard learned this from an older veteran who trained him years ago. That veteran once said that hearing the difference between a normal night sound and a suspicious one is one of the most important skills a guard can develop. Thinking of the veteran reminds him of the time smallpox hit the veteran's village. The veteran had survived the illness as a child and carried the scars on his face. He told stories of losing siblings, neighbors, and friends. He described how quickly the sickness spread, how no one understood why some lived and others died. The guard remembers the veteran saying that survival felt like luck rather than strength. People who were healthy and strong sometimes died. People who were weaker sometimes lived. There was no clear pattern. While walking, the guard reflects on the curious fact that some people survived smallpox and never caught it again. The healer had mentioned this more than once, saying it seemed that once the sickness passed, survivors were able to care for the ill without becoming infected. At the time, no one had a scientific explanation. It was simply an observed pattern. For people living in this period, such patterns were important. They guided decisions and helped people reduce risk, even without knowing the deeper reasons behind disease. Night passes slowly. Hours stretch, but the guard does not track them closely. He feels the steady passing of time through the rhythm of his steps and the gradual change in the cold. Air grows colder toward dawn and carries a sharper bite. The torches burn lower. The brazier's coals dim. The guards move a little more carefully to avoid drifting into fatigue. A little while later, the guard stops near the tower where the young guard sits. When he steps inside again, he sees the young man dozing lightly. It is a common mistake for new guards to sit too still for too long. The older guard taps the young man's shoulder gently and tells him to stand and walk a bit. The young man apologizes, embarrassed. The older guard simply nods and reminds him to keep pace. Falling asleep is dangerous not only for the castle but for the guard himself. An enemy could slip inside without being seen, or the young guard could fall off the wall walk if he loses balance. Outside, the sky begins to shift into a slightly lighter shade. Though dawn is still far off, the guard can sense the slow change before he can see it. Even small changes in light alter how shadows fall on the ground and how shapes appear at a distance. He adjusts his eyes gradually, scanning the horizon for anything unusual. Sometimes dawn brings movement. Farmers start early. Traders might approach with their carts. Wild animals return to their resting places. He continues walking, ready for another cycle of observation. Inside the castle, a few more servants begin to stir. Someone lights a lamp in the kitchen. Someone else carries a bucket of water to the stable. These small actions signal the approaching morning, and with morning will come news about the sick child. If the fever breaks, people will relax again. If not, the castle may need to take careful steps to prepare for possible isolation. The guard knows that whatever happens, his work continues. Enemy attacks may or may not come. Illness may or may not spread. But guarding does not change. Someone must always be awake. Someone must always watch. And as he walks along the wall, he hears the first faint calls of early birds in the distance, signaling that the long night is slowly giving way to the next day. The guard's footsteps echo softly as he moves down the wall walk, keeping his eyes on both the courtyard below and the fields beyond the moat. Dawn is still a long way off, but the first signs of light appear on the horizon, a pale grey that makes shapes just barely visible. He keeps his attention focused because the early hours can be dangerous in ways the daytime is not. Travelers often try to reach a castle before the gates are fully open, sometimes needing shelter, sometimes trying to sneak past unnoticed. In the distance, he notices a faint wisp of smoke rising from the village near the river. That is normal. People start fires early for cooking or warmth, even before sunrise. But smoke can also signal trouble, so he keeps watch a little longer. While the body of the castle sleeps, the village outside is always active in its own slow rhythm. The guard has seen how disease spreads in villages. One household falls ill, and soon the entire street is affected. Smallpox was especially devastating because it spreads from person to person so easily. There is no warning, and there is no cure once it takes hold. The older guard remembers an outbreak from many years ago. It started with a single traveller bringing sickness from a distant city. No one could have predicted how quickly it would move. Families who thought they were safe behind walls and fences found their children sick within days. People who had never seen it before were terrified by the rash, the fever, the pain. The guard himself had assisted in carrying water and food to those confined in the sick rooms. He remembers the smell of sweat, the dampness from sweating fevers, and the low moans of people too weak to sit up. Those memories are practical, not emotional. He recalls the steps taken, what worked to help people survive, and what failed. He walks past the gate again. The gate guards are stirring, preparing to remove the brazier coals and start the day's work. They mention the sick child again. The healer has asked that a few rooms be prepared just in case the fever does not break. It is a precaution. People in the castle know that smallpox can spread rapidly, especially in winter months when everyone gathers close together for warmth. Wooden walls and small rooms make isolation difficult, but any separation helps. Guards are instructed to help enforce these spaces, ensuring that workers, children, and visitors do not accidentally carry disease from one part of the castle to another. The older guard thinks about hygiene, which seems simple now, but was rarely practiced consistently at the time. Soap was expensive. Water was scarce in winter. People reused cloths, shared utensils, and slept in close quarters. These habits made disease spread almost automatically once it entered a building. The castle is careful, but even here there are risks. He recalls how the healer once warned about touching items used by the sick. Blankets, bowls, and clothing all carry infection if someone is contagious. Guards are careful to report any breaches in rules, no matter how minor, because even small mistakes can have serious consequences. The courtyard is waking slowly. A few stable boys carry buckets of water to the horses. One of the older men starts sweeping leaves from the steps. The guard nods to them as he passes. They are part of the daily routine, But they are also part of the defense of the castle. Indirectly, a healthy workforce ensures the castle runs smoothly. Sick workers slow everything down, create gaps in care, and allow danger, whether from enemies or disease, to grow unnoticed. He pauses at the stair leading to the main keep. He can see a servant carefully closing windows and shutters, trying to maintain warmth in the rooms below. The guard watches the movement carefully because small openings let in both cold air and, in the medieval mind, the risk of bad spirits or even sickness. Airflow mattered, even if people did not understand germs. Because stagnant, humid air made illness worse. He knows that some measures, keeping spaces dry, separating the sick, cleaning as best as possible, actually helped reduce infection, even if the people doing it did not know why. He recalls a story the healer once told about a family who survived smallpox because they had space to isolate each member. The child slept in one room, the parents in another, and a relative brought food without touching the sick. Not every family had this ability. Most shared beds, blankets, and kitchens. That is why smallpox was so deadly. People did not know exactly how it spread, and practical separation was difficult. The guard resumes his path along the wall. The village road is clearer now, with early workers moving to the fields. One cart appears in the distance. Its driver waves toward the castle. The guard recognizes him as someone who comes often with vegetables and grain. The gate guards are ready to open the main gate in a few minutes, but they will first check the traveler for signs of sickness. Anyone with fever, rash, or unusual weakness will be asked to wait outside. This is part of the castle's slow, careful response to disease outbreaks, a system developed over decades of living with epidemics. The guard thinks about smallpox in history more broadly. Large outbreaks often started in cities, then travelled along trade routes to smaller towns and villages. Military campaigns unknowingly carried it to new populations. Once introduced, it could be nearly impossible to stop. Children were especially vulnerable, and when children died in large numbers, the social structure of villages and towns was disrupted. Even minor cases could leave survivors weak or disfigured. Adults sometimes avoided the disease altogether if they had survived it as children. This partial immunity was a pattern observed across generations, even though no one understood immunity as a concept. Back inside the castle, preparations continue. Rooms are cleaned, sheets replaced, and small doors sealed as the healer checks on the child again. Guards deliver messages between the healer, the lord, and the staff. Everyone has their role. Even small tasks, like carrying water or lighting lamps, matter greatly in maintaining health and preventing panic. The older guard continues his walk, knowing that his observations help maintain this order. He reports any unusual sounds, movements, or signs of sickness to the healer or the lord. As the day begins to grow lighter, he finally ends one circuit and begins a second. The wall is quiet except for the soft scrape of boots and occasional bird calls. The rhythm of steps, the watching of surroundings, and the awareness of human vulnerability all combine into a form of meditation. Nights like this train the guard not only in defense, but also in observation and patience. He understands patterns, how animals move, how people behave, how disease shows its first warning signs. These patterns are crucial for survival in a medieval world. He thinks about how smallpox kills. The fever, the exhaustion, the rash, the weakened body. It is not fast for most, but it is relentless. Survivors are often scarred, weakened, and wary, and those who die leave families and communities devastated. He recalls that even in castles, which were more protected than villages, outbreaks caused panic. Wealth and stone walls could not fully prevent infection. Only careful monitoring, isolation, and attention to detail reduced the risk. By mid-morning, the courtyard becomes busier, the lord's servants move quickly. Supplies arrive from nearby towns. The sick child rests quietly under a blanket, tended by the healer. Guards rotate more formally now, as the schedule dictates, taking turns to observe the walls and maintain the order of the castle. The older guard finally takes a short break. leaning against the stone and drinking a little water. Even brief rest is important. Exhaustion lowers vigilance, and in a world with disease and enemies, lowered vigilance can be fatal. He considers the balance of life in the castle. Smallpox was not the only danger, but it was the one that could strike without warning, leaving no enemy in sight. Unlike raiders or storms, it could not be fought with swords, fire, or walls. People relied on simple observation, careful separation, and practical care. These small steps were sometimes enough to save lives. They gave survivors a chance to continue their work and protect the castle. The guard continues walking, observing the courtyard, the stable, the kitchen, and the walls. Everything he sees matters. Even small, repeated actions, washing dishes, carrying water, keeping distance from the sick, helped reduce risk. In this way, daily life itself became a defense. Life in the castle during a smallpox threat is structured, disciplined, and constant. Every guard, servant, and resident participates in maintaining safety, often without conscious thought. By late morning, sunlight finally touches the upper walls. The torches are extinguished. The brazier is cooled. Guards are still on duty, but the pace eases slightly as daytime routines take over. The older guard prepares to hand over observation to another, knowing that night will return soon. Disease waits in the background, invisible and constant, but the guard has done his part for this cycle. He knows he cannot fully prevent it, but he has maintained order, observed the signs, and helped protect the castle. And yet, the possibility of smallpox looms silently over the day. Families must continue to monitor each other. The healer must continue to watch for fever and rash, and guards must remain alert for both disease and disorder. This is the life of the castle, a rhythm of vigilance, labour, care and patience. It is the quiet story behind survival in a time when smallpox was both common and deadly, shaping every decision, every step, every routine. The guard walks along the inner wall again, checking the parapets. The morning is now fully underway and the courtyard is busier. Servants move between the kitchen, the stables, and storage rooms carrying water, food and supplies. Some sweep the floors, while others check on the animals. The horses are fed, brushed, and their stalls cleaned. These daily tasks are routine but critical, especially during an outbreak. Cleanliness, as much as possible, reduces the risk of disease spreading. The guards know that even small acts, like keeping buckets and tools clean, make a difference. The sick child remains in a small room near the healer. A blanket covers him, and the healer checks the pulse, examines the skin, and notes the temperature. Even without understanding the specific cause of smallpox, the healer knows to observe changes carefully. Fever, rash, and swelling are signs to monitor. Any sudden worsening requires immediate attention. The child's family members are kept separate, with only one person allowed to enter the room at a time. That person washes their hands and changes their outer clothing before touching others. Isolation like this is one of the few defenses people have against the sickness. Guards continue their rounds, moving steadily along the walls, stairs, and gates. Each guard has a schedule. Some patrol the outer walls, some the interior, some remain near the gate, and others check storage areas or watch the sick rooms. Rotation is critical. Fatigue leads to mistakes, and mistakes can be fatal in both defense and disease prevention. Even minor injuries, if left untreated, could weaken a guard, making him more susceptible to fever or other illnesses. The lord of the castle is informed regularly about the child's condition. Decisions are made slowly and cautiously. Visitors are kept at a distance. Supplies are brought in with minimal contact. Meals for workers and guards are prepared in separate areas when possible to prevent shared utensils from spreading disease. Guards may carry food to workers instead of allowing them to move freely. Every small measure is part of a larger system intended to reduce risk. In the village outside, families watch for signs of illness among their children and neighbours. If someone shows fever, rashes or unusual weakness, they are often separated immediately. Some families send the sick to larger settlements where a healer can supervise But travel carries its own risks of spreading infection. Knowledge of smallpox is largely practical. People observe patterns, pass information orally, and develop rules over generations. There are no books explaining virus transmission, no microscopes, no vaccines yet. Survival depends on practical care, observation, and keeping distance when necessary. The guard walks past the stables. Stable boys are at work again, feeding the horses and cleaning the stalls. Animals are an important part of life, and their health must be protected as well. Sick animals can weaken labor and transportation, indirectly increasing human vulnerability. The guard notes any unusual behavior in the animals, lethargy, coughing, or refusal to eat, as he has been taught that small signs can indicate larger problems. By midday, the sun is fully above the walls. Guards still patrol but pace themselves more deliberately. Tasks that require precision, like inspecting the drawbridge or checking locks, are done during this light to reduce the chance of mistakes. The castle's water supply is checked. Wells are inspected to ensure contamination is unlikely. Hand-washing, though primitive by modern standards, is encouraged when tending to the sick. Even rinsing hands with water or changing outer garments helps reduce the spread of disease. The sick child's condition is monitored every hour. The healer records observations, temperature, appetite, pulse, and rash progression. In smallpox cases, rashes often start on the face and arms, then move to the chest and legs. Observing this pattern helps the healer anticipate care needs. Fluids are offered carefully, and food is provided in small amounts that the child can manage. The healer also monitors for secondary infections, which were a common cause of death in smallpox survivors. Meanwhile, guards maintain their posts. A gate guard observes travelers arriving with goods. Each person is checked for signs of fever or visible illness. If any are suspected, they are kept outside or sent to a separate building for observation. Merchants are often accustomed to these precautions, understanding that cooperation keeps everyone safe. The castle relies on the discipline of both guards and visitors to maintain safety during outbreaks. In the kitchens, servants work with careful attention. Utensils used by the sick are kept separate. Porridge, bread, and broth are prepared those who are healthy, while the healer manages meals for the sick. Clean water is prioritized for drinking and washing. The castle stores water in multiple containers and rotates it regularly to prevent stagnation. Guards often assist with transporting water, ensuring that supplies reach each area efficiently. Throughout the day, the guards exchange observations with one another. Small details matter. A servant who appears fatigued or pale may indicate early signs of sickness. A horse refusing to eat may signal infection or stress. These observations are reported to the healer or lord promptly. The practice of noticing and recording minor changes is part of disease management, even without knowing the exact cause. By mid-afternoon, some villagers outside are tending to fields or livestock while taking precautions. Sick individuals are kept in separate huts, if possible. Families avoid sharing beds, blankets, and cooking utensils. Those who must care for the sick wear different clothing and wash hands when possible. These measures reduce contact and therefore slow the spread of smallpox. Inside the castle, the guard continues rounds. He observes the children in the nursery area. Even if healthy, they are monitored closely. Play is allowed but limited to prevent crowding. Small groups are preferable. Children who show any early signs of fever are immediately separated. Caretakers are assigned in shifts to avoid contact with multiple groups. The guard notes that even without understanding the virus, these practical measures are effective. The healer prepares medicine and ointments for minor complaints among the healthy population. Cuts, bruises, and colds are treated quickly. Guards assist in enforcing rules, cleaning, separating, and reporting symptoms. Every small step is part of a system designed to prevent minor illnesses from escalating and to reduce the likelihood of smallpox spreading if it arrives. By late afternoon, the sun lowers, and the guard continues along the outer walls. Observing the fields and forests is still important. Travelers, bandits, or wild animals may approach. Even during outbreaks, normal risks remain. The guard maintains focus on both the environment and the people within the castle. Smallpox is one of many dangers, but unlike enemies, it cannot be seen or fought directly. Observation and prevention are the only defenses. The sick child is improving slightly. Fever fluctuates. The healer notes progress carefully. If improvement continues, isolation may be gradually reduced. If not, more strict measures are implemented. Guards assist in moving supplies, cleaning rooms, and ensuring that other residents maintain distance. This is part of daily life in a castle during a contagious outbreak. The guard passes by the storage area where food and water are kept. Supplies are counted and organized. Any damaged or spoiled items are removed immediately to prevent disease. Even though smallpox is viral and not foodborne, maintaining hygiene and proper storage reduces other illnesses, keeping the population healthier overall. Healthier people are better able to survive smallpox. The courtyard is busy again in preparation for evening. Meals are prepared, equipment is checked, horses are fed again. Guards continue rounds along walls and inside. Each action is purposeful and careful. Schedules are adhered to. Rotation of tasks ensures rest and vigilance. Exhaustion is a risk both for defense and health. The healer continues to check the child regularly, noting improvements or declines. Any change is reported to the Lord. Guards help enforce rules around visitors and movement. They also watch for any signs that the disease might be spreading among healthy residents. Vigilance continues because smallpox can appear suddenly and early response is critical. Even as the day progresses, the patterns of disease management and castle defense intertwine. Guards, servants, the healer, and the Lord all work in coordination. Each has a role. Each action is recorded or remembered. The repetition of routine, the careful observation of symptoms, the separation of sick from healthy, these are the core strategies that allow people to survive outbreaks. By evening, the castle begins to slow down. Meals are served, and the courtyard empties. Guards continue patrols. The sick child rests under the healer's supervision. Observations continue. Even when nothing dramatic occurs, careful monitoring is critical. Smallpox can worsen suddenly, and early detection of fever or rash is key to survival. The night shift will begin soon. Guards prepare for the hours when darkness returns, and observation must be continuous. Rotations are planned so that no one is overly fatigued. Clean water and food are ready for the sick and healthy alike. Every small step, hygiene, isolation, observation, is part of the defense. Unlike swords or walls, these measures are invisible but vital. As night approaches again, the guard prepares for his evening round. He adjusts his cloak, ensuring that it will keep him warm through the long hours. The cold can make fingers stiff and movements slower, and during night patrols, every second counts. He checks the weapons. At his side the sword is secured. The spear is ready, and the leather gloves are in place. Even though the main danger tonight may not be raiders, readiness is essential. Illness spreads silently, and early observation can prevent larger problems. The courtyard has quieted. Servants have returned to the lower rooms for the night. Animals are settled in their stalls. The sick child remains under the healer's care. Only a few staff members are awake, tending to fires, water, and cleaning tasks. Guards moving along the walls provide most of the human presence outside the main keep. Every step along the parapets counts. A missed sign, a skipped check, could allow a problem to escalate unnoticed. The guard begins at the northeast corner tower. From this position, he can see the surrounding fields, the village roads, and the edge of the forest. Even without raiders, vigilance is necessary. Traveling merchants or villagers arriving late must be observed carefully, especially in times when disease is present. The guard notes shapes moving slowly in the distance. Some are returning farmers. Some may be stray animals. Observation requires patience. Distinguishing between harmless movement and potential risk is critical. Inside the castle, the healer continues hourly checks on the sick child. The fever has stabilized somewhat, but smallpox does not follow predictable patterns. The child's pulse, skin condition, and appetite are all recorded. Any deterioration is acted upon immediately. If the child's condition worsens suddenly, guards would be tasked with enforcing stricter isolation, and the Lord would be informed. Smallpox is unpredictable. Planning for contingencies is as important as observing current symptoms. Other members of the household maintain routines. Kitchens are cleaned, utensils are washed, and the remaining food supplies are organized. Even minor lapses in cleanliness could allow other illnesses to spread, further complicating care for the sick child. Guards carry water to different areas, ensuring that people can wash hands and clean rooms. Maintenance tasks, while ordinary, are part of disease management. The guard moves from the northeast tower to the main gate. He pauses to check the locks and chains of the drawbridge. Mechanical failures can be dangerous, both for defense and logistics. Any needed repairs are noted and scheduled. Observing equipment condition is as important as observing people. Properly functioning infrastructure ensures the smooth continuation of daily routines, even during outbreaks. As he walks the wall toward the southwest tower, he observes the sleeping quarters of the staff. Few lights are visible. Quiet is maintained to help residents rest. Those who sleep in proximity to the sick child are rotated to reduce prolonged exposure. Rest is considered a protective factor. Exhausted individuals are more susceptible to illness. The guard notes who is awake, who is resting, and which tasks remain unfinished. This log of observation helps maintain continuity across shifts. He passes the storerooms, where grain, flour, and dried foods are kept. These are checked for spoilage, pests, and moisture. Moldy or infested supplies could contribute to secondary illnesses, weakening those already vulnerable. Guards ensure that containers remain sealed and that water for drinking is clean. Hygiene and proper storage are practical preventive measures against disease, even if people do not fully understand the biology behind them. The sick child is monitored again. The healer observes that new pustules have appeared on the arms. This is typical for smallpox progression. The room is kept quiet. Only one caregiver is allowed inside at a time. Hand washing and clothing changes are enforced for anyone entering the sick room. These steps slow transmission. Guards help manage access, ensuring that residents do not inadvertently spread the illness. In the kitchen, a servant prepares simple meals, porridge, broth, and bread. Meals for the sick child are prepared separately, with utensils and containers cleaned immediately after use. Care is taken to limit contact between the sick and the healthy. Water is boiled or drawn from clean sources. Every step reduces risk. Guards supervise movement to ensure rules are followed. The courtyard is nearly empty. Only a few residents walk between buildings, carrying firewood or water. The guard observes their movements, noting signs of fatigue, fever, or weakness. Early detection helps prevent outbreaks from spreading. Even minor symptoms are taken seriously. The guard's observations, recorded mentally, inform the healer and the Lord if intervention is necessary. The guard continues his patrol along the walls. The night is long, and the cold increases. He stops frequently to stretch and keep muscles from stiffening. Movement is not only necessary for alertness, it also maintains circulation, which reduces fatigue and potential health risks. Guards are trained to maintain both physical readiness and careful attention to the environment. The sick child's condition remains stable, but smallpox is variable. Fever may rise suddenly, and complications are common. The healer has prepared a small set of herbs and ointments to address secondary infections, though there is no cure for the viral disease itself. Guards assist by maintaining the separation of the sick from the healthy population. Rotation of caregivers and strict adherence to routines are essential to survival. In the storerooms, supplies are counted again. Food, water, bedding, and fuel are tracked closely. Running out of essential items during an outbreak could increase mortality. Guards ensure that movement to and from storage areas is controlled. Tracking consumption and maintaining supplies is as critical as guarding the walls. The castle's outer gates are quiet. Few travellers approach at night. Guards stationed there remain vigilant, observing for both movement and signs of illness. Any visitor with fever or rash is delayed or redirected to a controlled area. These procedures minimize exposure and reduce the chance of introducing smallpox to the healthy population. In the stables, the horses are checked again. Stable boys sweep floors, remove waste, and provide fresh water and hay. Healthy animals support daily work and transportation, which is necessary for food distribution and communication with neighboring settlements. Guard observation of animals is routine. Sick or weakened animals are separated to prevent disruption. The sick child's fever remains constant. Observation continues. The healer records notes and watches for changes. Guards assist by maintaining boundaries and ensuring that other residents comply with separation protocols. Even with careful isolation, monitoring is intensive. Constant vigilance is needed because contact, even brief, can spread infection quickly. The kitchen prepares evening meals. Food is portioned and utensils cleaned immediately after use. Guards help deliver food to workers and residents, reducing unnecessary contact. Clean water and bedding are prioritized. Hygiene practices, though basic, are part of the castle's defensive system against illness. In the courtyard, the guard observes the movement of staff and servants. Tasks include firewood collection, water transport, and animal care. Each action is timed and monitored to reduce unnecessary contact between healthy individuals and the sick. The guard notes the physical condition of each person. Fatigue, pallor, or visible signs of illness are recorded and reported if necessary. Night falls again. Guards take positions along the walls and towers. Observations of people, animals, and the environment continue. Rotation ensures that no one becomes too fatigued. Fatigue could reduce observation effectiveness, allowing mistakes that might worsen the outbreak. Even a single lapse in monitoring could lead to new infections. The sick child's condition shows slight improvement. Fever fluctuates but does not increase dramatically. The healer continues hourly checks. Guards maintain rules for separation, hygiene, and access control. The castle operates as a coordinated system to manage disease, maintain safety, and ensure continuity of essential tasks. Daily routines continue. Kitchens prepare food, storerooms track supplies, stables care for animals, and guards patrol walls and courtyards. Observation, reporting, rotation, and adherence to hygiene protocols are constant. Residents understand that smallpox is a threat that requires discipline and vigilance. The guard moves steadily along the parapet again, noting the placement of torches and checking the stability of the stone. Each segment of the wall is observed with care. Minor cracks or loose stones are reported immediately to the master mason so repairs can be scheduled. Structural integrity is crucial, not only for defense against attackers, but also to provide safe passage for the patrol. Slipping or falling could result in injury, which would weaken the defensive network and add additional strain to the castle staff, who are already busy caring for the sick. Below, the courtyard is quiet but functional. Some servants carry supplies from storage to the kitchens and stables. Buckets of water are transported for washing dishes, tending to animals, and maintaining personal hygiene. Sweeping and cleaning occur intermittently to ensure dirt and debris do not accumulate in pathways. These small measures reduce the risk of secondary infections, which could exacerbate vulnerability during a smallpox outbreak. The child under the healer's supervision shows minor improvements in energy, though the rash continues to develop. The healer examines the skin carefully, looking for signs of inflammation, scabbing, or secondary infection. The observation of progression is critical for anticipating care needs. Anyone entering the sick room is required to change outer garments, wash hands, and limit contact. Guards manage this routine, preventing accidental breaches that might expose healthy individuals to the virus. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the staff prepare a simple meal: soft porridge, broth, and lightly baked bread. Each portion is carefully measured. Utensils and bowls are washed immediately after use to prevent cross-contamination. Water is boiled whenever possible or drawn from the cleanest available sources. Guards often assist by carrying food and water, ensuring minimal movement among residents, which helps reduce the chance of spreading infection. In the stables, the stable hands check all horses for signs of weakness, lethargy, or unusual behavior. Healthy animals are critical for transportation, message delivery, and hauling supplies. Sick or injured animals are separated from the herd and monitored carefully. Guards observe the stables to ensure routine procedures are followed, both for the animal's welfare and to minimize interactions that could compromise health. On the outer wall, the guard surveys the surrounding fields. Farm plots are visible in the morning light, and a few villagers tend to crops while taking precautions. Anyone showing signs of illness is asked to remain in separate areas. Even in the village outside the castle, precautions are similar: separation, monitoring, and careful handling of the sick. Observation and reporting are consistent practices that help communities reduce the risk of wider outbreaks. In the storerooms, a meticulous check of supplies occurs. Grain sacks are rotated to prevent spoilage. Containers of water are examined for clarity, and damaged or contaminated food is removed. Clean bedding is prepared in advance for both healthy and sick residents. Keeping track of provisions is essential because shortages can increase vulnerability. Guards ensure that storage areas are secure and that movement in and out is controlled. Back in the child's room, the healer monitors hydration and nutrition. Small sips of water and small portions of soft food are offered depending on the child's appetite. Changes in pulse, skin tone, and energy are recorded. The child's family observes from a nearby chamber, allowed limited contact under strict hygiene rules. This prevents unnecessary exposure while maintaining emotional support for the sick. As the day progresses, the guard continues rotations along the walls. Observation includes monitoring the behavior of staff, servants, and visitors. Signs of fatigue, pallor, sweating, or unusual movements are noted. Any deviation from normal patterns is reported to the healer or the lord. Maintaining vigilance is crucial, as early detection of symptoms can prevent further spread. The courtyard remains organized. Food preparation, water distribution, and cleaning proceed without interruption. Guards help coordinate movement to prevent crowding, which could increase contact between healthy individuals and those potentially exposed. Even minor lapses in control can accelerate disease spread, so routines are enforced strictly. In the stables, animals are fed again. Hay is distributed, water replenished, and waste cleared. Stable hands observe the horses for appetite, movement, and behavior. Guards check their records and note irregularities. Healthy animals are necessary for essential tasks, including delivering messages to neighboring settlements, transporting firewood, and hauling provisions. Throughout the castle, the healer continues to monitor the sick child. Temperature measured, skin examined, and hydration maintained. Guards ensure that no unnecessary contact occurs, helping limit exposure. The child's condition improves gradually, though the fever remains intermittent. Observation and patience are key components of effective care. In the kitchens, meal preparation continues. Cooking implements are washed thoroughly after each use, and water is prioritized for hygiene and drinking. Guards help carry meals, ensuring minimal risk of contact between different groups of residents. Routines are repetitive but necessary for maintaining safety during an outbreak. On the walls, the guard moves systematically. He pauses at regular intervals to survey the courtyard, storerooms, stables, and surrounding lands. Observation of small movements or changes in behavior is critical. Even subtle differences in routines or energy levels among residents can indicate the onset of illness. Guards communicate observations to the healer promptly. The sick child receives careful monitoring throughout the afternoon and evening. The healer notes the development of pustules and checks for swelling or signs of infection. Hydration and nutrition are maintained according to need. Guards ensure the child remains isolated and that only assigned caregivers have access. This controlled approach limits potential transmission within the castle. By evening, the courtyard slows, animals are settled, and most workers finish tasks for the day. The kitchen staff clean all cooking areas and store remaining food. Guards begin evening patrols along walls and gates. Rotation schedules ensure that each guard has rest periods while coverage remains continuous. Fatigue is managed carefully, as tiredness could reduce alertness and lead to lapses in observation or safety. Throughout the night, the pattern of observation, cleaning, and vigilance continues. The healer monitors the child hourly, noting any changes. Guards enforce rules on access, hygiene, and separation. Meals and water are provided in controlled ways, minimizing contact between groups. Clean bedding and ventilation are maintained to reduce stress and support recovery. The following morning, routines repeat with minor adjustments based on observations from the night. Guards and staff record new information. Any unusual signs of illness are addressed immediately. The child shows gradual improvement, though vigilance remains critical. Separation and controlled contact continue. Observation and reporting ensure that emerging problems are detected early. In the storerooms, guards verify that provisions are sufficient. Grain, flour, and water are rotated and stored properly. Damaged or contaminated items are removed. Supplies are counted and logged. Maintaining a stable supply chain is essential during an outbreak, as shortages can weaken the population and reduce resilience against smallpox. The guard walks along the walls, noting movement and behavior. Any minor fatigue or irregularity is recorded. Observation extends to animals, staff, and visitors. Even small deviations from normal behavior may indicate early signs of illness. Guards communicate observations to the healer to inform decisions about isolation and care. The child's condition is tracked hourly. Fever, rash progression, appetite, and hydration are recorded. Caregivers follow strict hygiene procedures. Guards maintain rules for separation, minimizing risk to healthy residents. Daily care focuses on monitoring, nutrition, hydration, and observation. Throughout the castle, routines remain consistent. Kitchens, stables, storerooms, and sleeping quarters are organized and monitored. Guards patrol walls, stairs, and gates, observing behavior and environmental conditions. Observation, hygiene, and structured routines form the core defense against smallpox. Evening approaches again. Guards rotate positions, ensuring rest periods and continuous coverage. The child's fever fluctuates but does not increase dramatically. Isolation and hygiene procedures continue. Meals and water are delivered carefully. Observation of residents, staff, and animals remains constant. During the night, the guard maintains rounds along the walls, pausing frequently to observe both the courtyard and the surrounding fields. Any irregularities in behavior, energy, or movement are noted and reported. Vigilance continues despite long hours and physical fatigue. Observation reporting and controlled routines are essential for minimizing the risk of smallpox spreading. In the kitchen, staff clean utensils, prepare simple meals, and manage water supplies. Guards assist in distributing food and water, limiting contact between different groups of residents. Hygiene and monitoring are routine, but essential for safety during an outbreak. The sick child shows slow but steady progress. Fever fluctuates, but overall energy increases slightly. Observation continues, with hourly checks on skin, pulse, and hydration. Guards ensure isolation rules are enforced. Meals and fluids are delivered according to need. Daily routines are maintained to provide structure, safety, and care. The guard continues his patrol along the eastern wall. Each step is measured. He pauses periodically to check the parapet for loose stones or damp patches that could make footing unsafe. Safety of the patrol route is critical. A minor slip could incapacitate a guard, reducing coverage of the castle. Structural maintenance is part of nightly vigilance. Even small cracks are noted, as repeated observations over time help the master mason prioritize repairs. In the courtyard below, staff perform basic maintenance. Buckets are emptied and cleaned. Floors are swept to remove dust, straw, and debris. Water barrels are replenished from the well. Stable hands check that each animal has food, water, and bedding. These actions, though routine, help maintain overall health in the castle. Clean, organized spaces reduce secondary health risks, which could complicate care for the sick child. The sick child remains under continuous observation. The healer monitors temperature, pulse, appetite, and rash progression. Caregivers wear protective clothing when entering the room. Guards control access to the chamber, ensuring only authorized individuals are present. Isolation is maintained rigorously, and protocols for hand-washing and clothing changes are followed consistently. Each small step reduces the likelihood of transmission. Meal preparation occurs in separate areas. Porridge, broth, and bread are prepared in quantities suitable for individuals, minimizing shared utensils. Guards assist in delivering meals, ensuring that different groups of residents do not cross paths unnecessarily. Water is boiled when possible and stored carefully. Hygiene routines are emphasized as clean water and utensils reduce the risk of additional infections. On the walls, guards rotate positions. Observation includes residents, animals, and surrounding lands. Any deviations from normal behavior are noted. Fatigue, pallor, or unusual movement may indicate early signs of illness. Guards report observations immediately to the healer or the lord. Monitoring the population is as important as maintaining structural defenses. In the storerooms, provisions are checked daily. Grain sacks, flour, and dried foods are inspected for spoilage or infestation. Water containers are examined for clarity and cleanliness. Bedding and clothing are rotated and replaced if necessary. Guards ensure that the movement in and out of storage areas is controlled. Maintaining these supplies supports overall health and reduces vulnerability during a smallpox outbreak. The stable remains active. Horses are checked for appetite, movement, and energy. Sick or weakened animals are separated and monitored. Healthy animals are crucial for transporting supplies, firewood, and messages to neighboring settlements. Guards observe these routines to ensure proper care and reduce potential disruptions. Throughout the day, the sick child's condition is tracked closely. Fever fluctuates and rash progression is monitored. Hydration and nutrition are maintained through small, frequent meals and fluids. Guards ensure isolation protocols are enforced. Only one caregiver enters at a time, following strict hygiene procedures. This controlled approach reduces the risk of transmission to healthy residents. The castle continues its daily operations. Kitchens, storerooms, and stables are organized and monitored. Guards patrol walls, gates, and staircases. Observation, hygiene, and structured routines form the primary defense against smallpox. Each individual in the castle plays a role in maintaining health and preventing spread. By late afternoon, the courtyard activity slows. Animals are settled and staff complete maintenance tasks. Guards rotate positions to ensure coverage and rest. Observation continues, noting behavior, energy levels, and minor symptoms among residents. Vigilance remains a constant necessity. The sick child's condition shows slight improvement. Fever is lower, appetite increases marginally, and energy is more consistent. Observation continues, with hourly checks on vital signs and rash progression. Guards enforce isolation and hygiene rules, ensuring minimal contact with healthy residents. As evening falls, the guard begins another patrol along the western wall. Observation extends to the surrounding fields and forests. Any unusual movement is noted, whether it is a visitor, animal, or structural issue. Nighttime routines prioritize safety and vigilance. Guards rotate positions and maintain coverage to prevent fatigue from reducing observation effectiveness. In the kitchens, staff clean utensils, prepare meals for the evening, and manage water supplies. Guards assist in delivery, maintaining separation between different groups of residents. Hygiene and organization reduce potential secondary infections, helping maintain overall health during the outbreak. The sick child's condition stabilizes further. Caregivers maintain strict hygiene routines, delivering food and fluids as required. Guards ensure isolation is maintained and monitor the child's room for any changes. Observation and documentation continue, supporting the healer's decisions. During the night, guards patrol systematically along the walls, checking the courtyard, storerooms, stables, and sleeping quarters. Any signs of fatigue, pallor, or unusual behavior are reported. Observation is continuous. Even minor deviations from normal routines could indicate early signs of illness. Guards communicate all findings promptly to the healer. The next morning, routines resume. Guards check walls, gates, and staircases for structural safety. Courtyard activity begins gradually as staff resume maintenance, cooking, and care tasks. Meals are prepared with attention to hygiene. Water is prioritized for both drinking and cleaning. Observation of residents continues, noting any signs of fatigue or illness. The sick child shows steady recovery. Fever continues to fluctuate, but remains manageable. Rash progression is monitored, and hydration and nutrition are maintained. Guards enforce isolation rules and monitor caregiver adherence to hygiene procedures. Observation, recording, and reporting continue throughout the day. Storerooms are checked again. Grain, flour, and water are rotated and inspected. Damaged or contaminated items are removed. Bedding is replaced as necessary. Guards supervise storage access, ensuring minimal risk of contamination. Proper supply management supports both daily operations and disease prevention. Stables are maintained carefully. Horses are fed, watered, and observed for energy and movement. Any signs of illness or weakness are noted. Healthy animals support essential tasks such as hauling firewood, transporting supplies, and delivering messages. Guards oversee stables to maintain organization and reduce disruptions. Throughout the day, guards rotate positions, observing both residents and the environment. Early signs of illness, such as fatigue, sweating, or pale appearance, are noted. These observations are communicated promptly to the healer and lord. Maintaining vigilance is a key defense against smallpox. Meal preparation continues in controlled areas. Utensils are washed immediately after use. Food and water are delivered with minimal contact between groups. Hygiene and organization reduce the risk of secondary infections. Observation and monitoring of residents complement these measures. By evening, the castle activity slows. Guards rotate positions to allow brief rest while maintaining coverage. Animals are settled, and supplies are organized. Meals and fluids for residents are distributed carefully. Observation of health, behavior, and environment continues without interruption. Night patrol resumes. Guards monitor walls, courtyards, and surrounding lands. Observation includes staff, residents, and animals. Any deviation from routine is reported. Vigilance is maintained to prevent gaps in surveillance, both for disease management and overall security. The sick child shows gradual improvement. Fever is lower and energy increases. Observation continues with hourly checks on vital signs and rash progression. Isolation and hygiene procedures remain in place. Caregivers follow strict protocols and guards enforce compliance. Daily routines remain structured. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms continue operations. Guards patrol and observe, monitoring both residents and the environment. Meals, water, and hygiene are managed systematically. Observation, isolation, and care remain the primary strategies for managing smallpox within the castle. The following morning, routines resume with minimal change. Guards check walls, gates, and staircases. Courtyard and storeroom activities begin. Meal preparation and distribution follow strict hygiene protocols. Observation continues to detect any new signs of illness early. Guards maintain vigilance, ensuring that daily operations proceed without introducing additional risks. The sick child's condition stabilizes further. Fever continues to fluctuate but gradually declines. Rash progression is monitored closely. Hydration and nutrition are maintained through careful administration of food and fluids. Isolation continues. Guards supervise adherence to protocols. Observation and reporting support the healer's decisions and the lord's planning. In storerooms, supplies are checked systematically. Grain, flour, and water are rotated and examined. Damaged or spoiled items are removed. Bedding and clothing are replaced as needed. Guards oversee all movement to reduce contamination risks. Proper organization of supplies helps maintain overall health and readiness. Stables are maintained continuously. Horses receive food, water, and monitoring. Any changes in behavior, appetite, or movement are noted. Guards ensure that stable routines are followed consistently. Healthy animals support essential transportation and labor functions. Throughout the day, guards observe residents and the environment carefully. Early symptoms of illness are recorded and communicated. Vigilance is maintained to prevent new infections. Observation complements isolation, hygiene, and structured routines as the primary measures against smallpox. By late afternoon, the courtyard slows. Staff and residents complete daily tasks. Meals and fluids are delivered to both healthy and sick residents. Guards rotate positions, ensuring continued coverage while allowing brief rest. Observation of both health and behavior remains constant. Evening routines begin. Guards patrol walls and gates, observing the courtyard and surrounding lands. Nighttime procedures prioritize vigilance and safety. Meals and hydration continue to be delivered under controlled conditions. Observation, reporting, and maintenance continue throughout the night. The sick child shows continued gradual improvement. Fever decreases, appetite improves, and energy levels stabilize. Observation and care continue. Isolation and hygiene procedures remain in effect. Guards monitor all activity closely to prevent inadvertent exposure. Daily routines repeat consistently. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms are maintained. Guards patrol and observe. Meals and fluids are delivered systematically. Observation, isolation, and hygiene practices remain central to managing smallpox. The guard begins his patrol at the northern tower. He inspects the parapets, checking for loose stones, damp patches, and any signs of erosion. Every section is carefully observed. Even minor structural weaknesses can be dangerous. Slips, trips, or collapses could result in injury, reducing coverage of the walls. Observing the walls for wear is a routine part of nightly vigilance. Reports are made to the master mason, who schedules necessary repairs. In the courtyard, activity is minimal but ongoing. Servants carry water from the well to the kitchens and stables. They sweep pathways to remove dust and debris, reducing the risk of contamination. Animals are tended to, horses are fed, watered, and their stalls cleaned. These simple routines help maintain the overall health of the castle population. Keeping spaces clean reduces additional risk of infection, which is particularly important during a smallpox outbreak. The sick child continues to receive care under the healer's supervision. Temperature, pulse, and rash progression are recorded frequently. Hydration and nutrition are maintained through small portions of food and water. Only designated caregivers enter the child's room, following strict hygiene practices. Guards enforce these rules, ensuring no unauthorized access, which minimizes risk of disease transmission to healthy residents. Meal preparation is handled carefully in separate areas. Porridge broth and bread are portioned individually. Cooking utensils and containers are washed thoroughly after each use. Water is treated or drawn from the cleanest sources. Guards assist in delivering meals, reducing contact between groups of residents. Hygiene is maintained, and observation is constant to detect any changes in behavior or health. The guard continues along the wall, pausing periodically to observe the courtyard, stables, and surrounding lands. Residents, animals, and visitors are monitored for signs of fatigue, pallor, or unusual behavior. Even minor deviations from normal patterns can indicate early illness. Observations are reported to the healer or lord immediately, allowing for timely intervention. In the storerooms, supplies are checked daily. Grain, flour, and water are inspected for spoilage. Bedding is rotated or replaced. Damaged or contaminated items are removed. Guards oversee storage areas to control access and maintain organization. Maintaining supplies supports both daily operations and disease prevention, as shortages could weaken residents and increase susceptibility. The stables remain a focus of attention. Horses are fed, watered, and observed for activity levels. Any signs of weakness or unusual behavior are recorded. Guards monitor routines to ensure compliance and reduce potential disruptions. Healthy animals are necessary for transportation, hauling supplies, and maintaining communication with neighboring settlements. Throughout the day, the sick child's condition is monitored closely. Fever fluctuates, rash progression is recorded, and nutrition is maintained. Caregivers follow strict protocols to prevent contamination. Guards ensure isolation rules are enforced and report any deviation. Observation continues as the primary method for managing disease risk. The castle maintains structured routines. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms operate efficiently. Guards patrol walls, gates, and stairways. Observation, reporting, and adherence to hygiene practices form the core strategy against smallpox. Residents understand that compliance with routines is essential for health and survival. By late afternoon, courtyard activity slows. Staff complete maintenance, food distribution, and animal care. Guards rotate positions, allowing brief rest while maintaining coverage. Observation of residents and the environment continues. Vigilance remains essential to prevent new infections. The sick child shows signs of gradual improvement. Fever is lower, energy levels increase, and appetite stabilizes. Observation continues with hourly checks on vital signs and rash. Isolation and hygiene measures remain in effect. Guards monitor compliance and report any irregularities. As evening approaches, the guard begins patrols along the western wall. Observation extends to the surrounding fields and roads. Any unusual movement is noted, whether human, animal, or environmental. Nighttime routines prioritize vigilance. Guards rotate positions to prevent fatigue while maintaining continuous coverage. In the kitchens, staff clean utensils, prepare meals, and manage water supplies. Guards assist in delivery, ensuring minimal contact between groups. Hygiene practices are maintained. Observation continues, noting any irregularities in residents' behavior or energy. The sick child maintains a stable condition. Fever remains manageable, and energy levels improve slowly. Observation, nutrition, hydration, and isolation continue. Guards supervise adherence to protocols. Monitoring supports the healer's decisions and ensures the safety of the wider population. During the night, guards patrol walls and towers. Observation includes courtyards, storerooms, stables, and sleeping quarters. Any changes in behavior, energy, or appearance are reported. Continuous monitoring helps detect early signs of illness. Guards communicate findings to the healer promptly. The following morning, routines resume. Guards inspect walls, gates, and staircases for structural integrity. Courtyard activity begins gradually as staff resume maintenance, cooking, and care tasks. Meals are prepared under strict hygiene protocols. Observation of residents continues, noting fatigue or potential symptoms. Guards ensure compliance with all rules. The sick child shows further improvement. Fever continues to decline, energy increases, and appetite stabilizes. Observation continues with hourly checks on pulse, temperature, and rash. Isolation protocols are maintained. Caregivers follow hygiene practices, and guards enforce adherence. Storerooms are checked. Grain, flour, water, and bedding are rotated and inspected. Contaminated or damaged items are removed. Guards control access and maintain organization. Proper supply management supports health and continuity of daily operations. Stables are maintained. Horses receive food, water, and monitoring. Signs of weakness or illness are recorded. Guards ensure routines are followed. Healthy animals are essential for transportation, supply distribution, and communication with other settlements. Guards continue rotating positions along walls, observing residents and the surrounding environment. Early signs of illness are recorded and reported. Vigilance is maintained to prevent outbreaks. Observation, isolation, hygiene, and structured routines remain the primary strategies against smallpox. Meal preparation continues in controlled areas. Utensils are washed after each use. Food and water are delivered systematically to minimize contact. Guards monitor distribution. Observation of residents complements hygiene measures and isolation protocols. By evening, courtyard activity slows. Guards rotate positions for rest while maintaining coverage. Animals are settled, supplies organized, and meals delivered. Observation continues, monitoring health, behavior, and environment. Vigilance is maintained throughout the night. The sick child shows gradual recovery. Fever decreases, energy increases, and appetite stabilizes. Observation and care continue. Isolation and hygiene protocols are enforced. Guards monitor all activity closely to prevent accidental exposure. Daily routines repeat consistently. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms are maintained. Guards patrol walls, gates, and courtyards. Meals and fluids are delivered systematically. Observation, isolation, and hygiene practices remain central to managing smallpox in the castle. Over the following days, the same patterns continue. Guards observe walls, courtyards, stables, and storage areas. Residents' behavior and energy are monitored for early signs of illness. Food and water are prepared carefully, and hygiene protocols are strictly enforced. Observation, reporting, and routine tasks form the foundation of disease management. The sick child gradually recovers. Fever subsides, rash begins to scab over, and appetite improves. Observation continues, but isolation can be slowly reduced under careful supervision. Guards continue to monitor compliance with hygiene and separation protocols. Courtyard activity gradually increases as routines stabilize. Kitchens, stables, and storage areas operate efficiently. Guards patrol systematically, ensuring continuous observation. Meals and water are delivered with minimal contact between residents. Monitoring and structured routines continue to reduce the risk of smallpox spreading further. By late afternoon, courtyard activity slows again. Guards rotate positions, allowing brief rest while maintaining coverage. Animals are settled. Food and water for residents are distributed carefully. Observation of health and behavior remains constant. Evening routines begin. Guards patrol walls, gates, and towers. Observation extends to the surrounding fields and roads. Any unusual activity is noted. Nighttime protocols emphasize vigilance. Guards rotate positions to prevent fatigue while maintaining continuous coverage. The sick child's condition stabilizes further. Fever is minimal, energy levels increase, and appetite remains steady. Observation, nutrition, hydration, and isolation continue. Guards supervise adherence to protocols and report any changes. Care continues under the healer's guidance. Daily routines repeat consistently. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms operate efficiently. Guards patrol walls and courtyards. Meals and fluids are delivered systematically. Observation, isolation, and hygiene practices remain central to managing smallpox within the castle. The guard begins his patrol at the southern battlements. He walks along the parapet, checking the masonry for wear, cracks, or damp areas. These inspections are routine but essential. Even minor damage can become a hazard, creating risk of slips or structural failure. Reports of issues are sent to the master mason, who prioritizes repairs to maintain the safety and functionality of the castle. Observation of the physical structure is as important as monitoring the inhabitants. In the courtyard below, activity continues at a slow pace. Servants transport water from the well to the kitchens and stables. Pathways are swept regularly to remove dust, straw, and dirt. Animals are tended carefully, horses are fed, watered, and their stalls cleaned. These routine measures support general health and help prevent the spread of secondary infections, which could complicate care during a smallpox outbreak. The sick child remains under continuous observation. The healer checks temperature, pulse, and the development of the rash. Hydration and nutrition are maintained with small portions of water and soft food. Only designated caregivers enter the room, following strict hygiene procedures. Guards monitor access, ensuring that no unauthorized individuals enter, which minimizes the risk of disease transmission. Meal preparation occurs in separate areas. Porridge, broth, and bread are portioned individually. Cooking utensils and containers are washed carefully after use. Water is treated or taken from the cleanest sources available. Guards assist in distributing meals, reducing the movement of residents and minimizing contact between healthy and potentially exposed individuals. Observation continues alongside these precautions. The guard moves from the southern battlement toward the western wall. Periodically, he stops to survey the courtyard, stables, and surrounding lands. He observes residents, animals, and visitors for signs of fatigue, pallor, or unusual movement. Small deviations from normal behavior are recorded. Reports are sent promptly to the healer or lord to ensure timely interventions. Vigilance remains continuous. In the storerooms, supplies are inspected daily. Grain, flour, and water are checked for spoilage or contamination. Bedding and clothing are rotated or replaced as needed. Damaged or soiled items are removed. Guards maintain access control and record observations. Proper organization of provisions supports both daily operations and disease prevention. Shortages or contaminated supplies could weaken residents and increase susceptibility to illness. The stables are carefully maintained. Horses are fed, watered, and monitored for activity levels. Signs of illness, lethargy, or changes in appetite are recorded. Guards ensure that stable routines are followed precisely. Healthy animals are essential for transportation, hauling provisions, and delivering messages to neighboring settlements. The sick child's condition is monitored continuously. Fever fluctuates, rash progression is observed, and nutrition is maintained through careful administration of meals and fluids. Caregivers follow hygiene protocols strictly, and guards enforce compliance. Observation remains the primary tool for early detection of complications and for preventing transmission to healthy residents. Throughout the day, the castle operates with structured routines. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms are organized and monitored. Guards patrol walls, gates, and staircases. Observation, reporting, and adherence to hygiene practices form the core approach to managing smallpox. Residents understand that strict compliance with routines is necessary for their safety. By mid-afternoon, courtyard activity decreases. Staff complete maintenance tasks, distribute food and water, and tend to animals. Guards rotate positions to allow for rest while maintaining coverage. Observation of residents and the environment continues, ensuring that any changes are detected promptly. The sick child shows gradual improvement. Fever is lower, energy levels rise, and appetite stabilizes. Observation continues with hourly checks of pulse, temperature, and rash progression. Isolation and hygiene measures remain in effect. Guards supervise adherence to protocols and report any deviations. As evening approaches, the guard begins patrols along the northern wall. Observation extends to the surrounding fields and roads. Any unusual movement is noted, whether human, animal, or environmental. Nighttime routines emphasize vigilance. Guards rotate positions to prevent fatigue while maintaining continuous coverage. Kitchens continue to prepare meals. Staff clean utensils, manage water supplies, and portion food carefully. Guards assist in delivery, maintaining minimal contact between groups. Hygiene practices are strictly followed, reducing risk of secondary infections. Observation of residents continues in parallel, noting any changes in energy or behavior. The sick child maintains a stable condition. Fever is manageable and energy levels are improving slowly. Observation, nutrition, hydration, and isolation continue. Guards monitor compliance with hygiene and separation protocols. Monitoring and documentation support the healer's decisions. During the night, guards patrol systematically along walls, towers, and staircases. Courtyards, storerooms, stables, and sleeping quarters are observed continuously. Any deviations from normal behavior, appearance, or energy are recorded and reported. Vigilance remains critical to detect early signs of illness. Guards communicate observations promptly to the healer. The following morning, routines resume. Guards inspect walls, gates, and staircases. Courtyard and storeroom activities begin gradually. Kitchens prepare meals with attention to hygiene. Water is prioritized for drinking, cleaning, and food preparation. Residents are monitored carefully for any signs of fatigue or early symptoms of illness. The sick child continues to improve gradually. Fever diminishes, rash begins to scab over, and energy increases. Observation continues with frequent checks on pulse, temperature, and nutrition. Isolation protocols are maintained. Caregivers follow hygiene practices, and guards enforce adherence. Storerooms are checked thoroughly. Grain, flour, water, and bedding are rotated and inspected. Contaminated or damaged items are removed. Guards supervise access to ensure organization and safety. Proper management of supplies reduces risk and supports overall health. Stables are maintained. Horses are fed, watered, and observed carefully. Any signs of weakness or illness are recorded. Guards ensure that routines are followed correctly. Healthy animals support transportation, labor, and communication with surrounding settlements. Guards continue rotating positions along walls and parapets. Observation of residents, staff, and the surrounding environment remains constant. Early signs of illness, fatigue, or unusual behavior are reported. Vigilance is maintained to prevent outbreaks. Observation, isolation, hygiene, and structured routines remain the main strategies for smallpox management. Meal preparation continues in controlled areas. Utensils are washed thoroughly. Food and water are distributed systematically to minimize contact. Guards monitor all movements and deliveries. Observation of residents complements hygiene measures and isolation protocols. By late afternoon, courtyard activity slows. Guards rotate positions to allow brief rest while maintaining coverage. Animals are settled. Food and water are delivered to residents in a controlled manner. Observation of health and behavior continues uninterrupted. Evening routines begin. Guards patrol walls, gates, and towers, observing the courtyard and surrounding areas. Any unusual movement is noted. Nighttime protocols emphasize continuous vigilance. Guards rotate to prevent fatigue while maintaining coverage. The sick child's condition stabilizes further. Fever decreases, appetite improves, and energy levels are more consistent. Observation, hydration, nutrition, and isolation continue. Guards supervise adherence to protocols and report any changes. Care continues under the healer's direction. Daily routines are repeated consistently. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms operate efficiently. Guards patrol walls, gates, and staircases. Meals and water are delivered systematically. Observation, isolation, and hygiene practices remain central to managing smallpox. Over the following days, these routines continue. Guards monitor walls, courtyards, stables, and storerooms. Residents are observed for early signs of illness. Food and water are prepared with care. Hygiene and isolation protocols remain in place. Observation and structured routines form the backbone of disease management. The sick child gradually recovers. Fever subsides, rash scabs over, and appetite stabilizes. Observation continues. Isolation can be reduced slowly under careful supervision. Guards monitor hygiene compliance and maintain structured routines. Courtyard activity gradually returns to normal. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms operate efficiently. Guards patrol systematically. Meals and fluids are delivered with minimal contact between residents. Observation, reporting, and adherence to structured routines reduce the risk of smallpox transmission. By late afternoon, courtyard activity slows again. Guards rotate positions, allowing brief rest while maintaining coverage. Animals are settled. Food and water are delivered carefully. Observation of health, behavior, and environment continues consistently. Evening routines begin. Guards patrol walls, gates, and towers. Observation extends to surrounding fields and roads. Any irregular activity is noted. Nighttime protocols emphasize continuous vigilance. Guards rotate positions to prevent fatigue while maintaining coverage. The sick child shows continued recovery. Fever is minimal, energy levels improve, and appetite remains steady. Observation and care continue. Isolation and hygiene protocols remain in effect. Guards monitor activity closely to prevent accidental exposure. Daily routines repeat consistently. Kitchens, stables, and storerooms operate efficiently. Guards patrol walls, gates, and courtyards. Meals and water are delivered systematically. Observation, isolation, and hygiene remain central to smallpox management within the castle. Smallpox is a disease caused by a virus called the variola virus. It has been one of the deadliest diseases in human history. People of all ages can catch it, but it often affects children more severely. It spreads from one person to another, usually through close contact. Breathing in droplets from an infected person's cough or sneeze can pass the virus. Touching items that the infected person has used, such as clothing or bedding, can also spread it. This is why in a castle or village, isolating sick individuals is essential. The first signs of smallpox appear after an incubation period, usually around 10 to 14 days after exposure. During this time, the person feels well and does not show symptoms, but the virus is already inside the body. After the incubation period, the first symptoms begin. The early signs include fever, fatigue, and body aches. The person may feel weak, dizzy, or unusually tired. A headache and sometimes vomiting may occur. These symptoms can last 2 to 4 days before the most recognizable sign appears. After the early symptoms, a rash begins to form. It usually starts on the face, around the mouth and nose, and then spreads to the arms, legs, and eventually the trunk. The rash starts as small red spots. Over a day or two, these spots become raised bumps filled with a clear fluid. These bumps eventually turn into pustules, which are thick and round. This stage is painful and uncomfortable. The rash is often accompanied by high fever and severe weakness. The rash and pustules are contagious. People who touch them or come into close contact with the infected person can catch the virus. This is why caregivers, guards, and family members must follow strict hygiene and isolation rules. Clothing, bedding, and utensils must be separated or cleaned carefully. The virus can survive for a short time on surfaces, which is why careful management of items used by the sick is necessary. After about 2 weeks, the pustules begin to scab over. This scabbing phase signals that the body is fighting the infection. The scabs eventually fall off, leaving scars. The scars can be deep and permanent, often on the face, arms, and hands. Smallpox can leave survivors with noticeable marks, which historically were a visible reminder of the disease. Smallpox can be mild or severe. Mild cases have fewer pustules, lower fever, and faster recovery. Severe cases can involve hundreds of pustules, prolonged high fever, and complications such as bleeding, organ failure, or bacterial infections in the skin. Some severe cases lead to death. In historical outbreaks, mortality rates could range from 20% to 40% and sometimes higher, especially for children or people weakened by malnutrition or other illnesses. The history of smallpox is long. It has been recorded in human populations for thousands of years. Ancient civilizations, including those in Egypt, India, and China, documented illnesses that match the description of smallpox. It spread widely through trade, war, and migration. Historical populations had no vaccine or medicine to cure it, so survival depended on isolation, careful care, and observation. One of the earliest methods of prevention was called variolation. This practice involved deliberately exposing a healthy person to material taken from a smallpox pustule of someone who was infected. The exposure was usually small, and the hope was that it would cause a mild form of the disease, after which the person would become immune. Variolation carried risks. Some people became seriously ill or died, but it often prevented more savatural infections. In the 18th century, Edward Jenner developed a safer method called vaccination. Jenner noticed that milkmaids who had contracted cowpox, a related but milder disease, did not get smallpox. He tested the practice by using material from cowpox sores to inoculate people. This method provided immunity to smallpox without the high risks of variolation. Vaccination gradually became widespread and ultimately led to the global eradication of smallpox in the 20th century. Smallpox affected entire communities. During outbreaks, families would separate the sick from the healthy. Towns or villages might be quarantined. Guards or caregivers monitored who could enter or leave affected areas. Supplies of food, water, and firewood had to be organized carefully. Even in castles, isolation and hygiene were key to preventing the disease from spreading to residents and workers. Symptoms can be divided into stages. The incubation period lasts about 10-14 days, during which there are no symptoms. The prodromal stage follows, with fever, headache, fatigue, and sometimes vomiting. This lasts 2 to 4 days. The eruptive stage follows, with the rash appearing, spreading, and developing into pustules. The scabbing stage occurs after approximately 2 weeks, when pustules crust over and gradually fall off. The recovery stage follows, though scars remain. Smallpox is highly contagious. It spreads most easily during the rash and pustule stage. Before symptoms appear, a person is usually not infectious, which makes tracking exposure challenging. Close contact is the primary mode of transmission, which historically is why families, caregivers, and guards had to maintain careful separation from the sick. Clothing, bedding, and utensils used by the infected were considered potential sources of infection. Historically, smallpox outbreaks could devastate populations. Some towns lost large portions of their residents. Children were especially vulnerable. Survivors were often left with lifelong scars or weakened health. Entire households or communities might experience long periods of quarantine, affecting work, trade, and daily life. The fear of the disease shaped behavior, including travel, social gatherings, and care for the sick. Preventing smallpox before vaccines included isolation, cleanliness, and careful monitoring. Healthy individuals were kept separate from the sick. Items handled by the infected were cleaned, burned, or stored away for long periods. People observed their neighbors carefully, looking for early signs of fever or rash. Guards in castles or towns helped enforce these measures, maintaining boundaries and limiting contact. Smallpox could appear suddenly in a population and spread rapidly. Symptoms emerged within days after exposure, and the visible rash made it easier to identify cases. Early recognition of fever and weakness was critical. Families and caregivers had to respond quickly to isolate the sick, provide nutrition and hydration, and prevent secondary infections. Recovery from smallpox could take several weeks. Fever would subside first, followed by the scabbing of pustules. Energy levels gradually returned, but the body remained weak for some time. People often needed rest for several weeks before resuming normal activities. Proper hydration and nutrition were essential to recovery. Caregivers monitored the sick closely to prevent additional health complications. The impact of smallpox extended beyond immediate illness. Survivors often carried scars, which could affect social interactions, appearance, and work. Families who lost members faced emotional and economic strain. Communities affected by outbreaks had to reorganize labor, food production, and care routines. The fear of contagion influenced behavior for months. Even after the outbreak ended, smallpox played a role in shaping history. Entire armies, settlements, and regions were weakened during outbreaks. Trade could be disrupted. Population declines affected agriculture and food supplies. In some cases, epidemics shifted political or military strategies as leaders responded to illness among soldiers or workers. Observation, isolation, and practical care were critical tools before vaccines existed. In castles and towns, disease management was routine. Guards observed residents for early signs. Caregivers provided food, water, and basic care. Isolation prevented spread. Storerooms, kitchens, and sleeping quarters were organized to reduce contact. Cleanliness, even in simple forms, helped reduce risk of secondary infections. The combination of observation hygiene, isolation, and structured routines formed the primary defense against smallpox. Smallpox is caused by the variola virus, which is part of the poxvirus family. It is a highly contagious disease that spreads mainly through close contact. The virus can pass from person to person through droplets from coughing or sneezing. It can also spread through contact with contaminated objects, including bedding, clothing, or utensils. This is why, historically, careful separation of the sick from the healthy was essential to prevent outbreaks. The incubation period for smallpox, the time between exposure and the appearance of symptoms, typically lasts around 10 to 14 days. During this time, the person feels well and does not show signs of illness. However, the virus is multiplying within the body. Early recognition is difficult during this stage, which historically made containment challenging. After the incubation period, early symptoms appear. These include fever, fatigue, headache, and general discomfort. Some people experience pain, vomiting, or chills. These symptoms last for 2 to 4 days before the most recognizable sign, the rash, develops. The onset of fever often signals the beginning of contagiousness, so families, caregivers, and guards would be particularly cautious during this time. The rash usually starts on the face, especially around the mouth and nose, and then spreads to the arms, legs, and torso. Initially, small red spots appear. Over the next day or two, these spots become raised bumps filled with clear fluid. The bumps then develop into pustules, which are thick, round, and often painful. The pustules are highly contagious. Touching them or contact with contaminated items could spread the virus. The progression of the rash is an important indicator of the disease's severity. Mild cases have fewer pustules, lower fever, and a faster recovery. Severe cases may have hundreds of pustules, prolonged fever, and complications such as bacterial infections of the skin, dehydration, or organ problems. Mortality rates in severe cases could reach 30% to 40% and sometimes higher, especially in children or individuals weakened by malnutrition or other illnesses. After about 2 weeks, the pustules begin to scab over. The scabbing stage is a sign that the body is fighting the infection. Over time, the scabs fall off, leaving permanent scars. Scarring is most common on the face, arms, and hands. Survivors carry these marks for life. Historically, these scars served as visible reminders of the disease, and in some communities, they indicated immunity to future infection. Smallpox has a long history. It has been present in human populations for thousands of years. Ancient records from Egypt, India, and China describe illnesses matching the symptoms of smallpox. The disease spread widely through trade, migration, and warfare. Before vaccines existed, survival depended on careful care, observation, and isolation. Families and communities developed routines to minimize contact and manage resources during outbreaks. Early prevention methods included variolation. Variolation involved deliberately exposing a healthy person to material from a smallpox sore. This could produce a mild infection and often resulted in immunity. Variolation carried risks. Some individuals became seriously ill or died. Despite the risks, variolation reduced mortality compared with natural infection and was practiced in several cultures, including parts of Asia and Africa, before reaching Europe. In the late 18th century, Edward Jenner introduced vaccination, which provided a safer method of prevention. Jenner observed that milkmaids who had contracted cowpox, a related but milder disease, did not develop smallpox. He used material from cowpox sores to inoculate individuals, which conferred immunity without the high risks associated with variolation. Vaccination gradually became widespread and ultimately led to the global eradication of smallpox in the 20th century. Smallpox outbreaks could affect entire communities. Families would isolate the sick, often in separate rooms or separate houses. Towns and villages might quarantine affected areas. Guards or caregivers monitored movement to ensure compliance. Food, water, and firewood were organized carefully to support both sick and healthy individuals. Even in castles, these measures were essential for preventing the disease from spreading to residents, staff, and workers. The stages of smallpox can be broken down simply. The incubation stage lasts about 10 to 14 days with no symptoms. The prodromal stage follows with fever, headache, fatigue, and sometimes vomiting, lasting 2 to 4 days. The eruptive stage begins when the rash appears, spreading and developing into pustules. The scabbing stage occurs after approximately 2 weeks, when pustules crust over and gradually fall off. Recovery follows, although scars remain. Each stage is associated with specific care needs and monitoring. Smallpox is most contagious during the rash and pustule stage. Before symptoms appear, people are usually not infectious, which historically made early detection challenging. Close contact is the main mode of transmission. Clothing, bedding, and utensils used by the infected can carry the virus, which is why careful hygiene, separation, and monitoring were critical. Historically, outbreaks could be devastating. Towns sometimes lost a large percentage of their population. Children were especially vulnerable. Survivors often had lifelong scars. Families who lost members faced both emotional and economic challenges. Communities reorganized labor, food production, and care routines. Fear of the disease influenced behavior for months, including travel restrictions, avoidance of gatherings, and careful monitoring of household members. Preventive measures before vaccination included isolation of the sick, careful cleaning, and observation of symptoms. Healthy individuals were separated from those infected. Clothing, bedding, and utensils used by the sick were cleaned, burned, or stored away. Communities observed neighbors carefully, looking for early signs of fever or rash. Guards and caregivers were crucial in enforcing these measures, maintaining boundaries and limiting contact. Smallpox could appear suddenly and spread quickly. Symptoms developed within days after exposure. The visible rash helped identify cases, but early detection was still difficult. Families had to respond quickly to isolate the sick, provide hydration and nutrition, and prevent secondary infections. Observation and careful routines were essential for survival. Recovery from smallpox could take several weeks. Fever usually subsided first, followed by scabbing of pustules. Energy levels returned gradually. Even after visible recovery, the body remained weak and additional care was necessary. Hydration, nutrition, and rest were key to supporting recovery. Caregivers monitored the sick closely for complications. The disease left long-term effects. Survivors often carried scars, which could affect appearance, work, and social interactions. Families and communities faced emotional and economic strain. Historical outbreaks could influence entire regions, affecting trade, agriculture, and labor supply. Observation, isolation, hygiene, and structured care were the primary tools to reduce mortality and prevent transmission. In castles, disease management relied on structured routines. Guards observed residents for early signs. Caregivers provided nutrition, hydration, and basic care. Sick individuals were isolated and movement was controlled. Kitchens, storerooms, and sleeping areas were organized to minimize contact. Cleanliness helped reduce secondary infections. Observation, hygiene, isolation, and careful routines formed the main defense against smallpox. Smallpox influenced daily life. People avoided close contact during outbreaks. Travel was restricted. Families monitored each other closely. Guards ensured rules were followed. Even small deviations in behavior or hygiene could allow the virus to spread. Structured routines, observation, and careful separation were crucial. The disease could be mild or severe. Mild cases involved fewer pustules, lower fever, and faster recovery. Severe cases involved widespread pustules, prolonged fever, and sometimes complications like bacterial infection, dehydration, or organ failure. Mortality rates were high in severe cases. Children and weakened individuals were at greatest risk. Early observation and careful management were essential. Smallpox is now eradicated due to vaccination. Before vaccines, survival depended on isolation, hygiene, careful observation, and structured care. Historical outbreaks demonstrate the importance of these practices in limiting spread and supporting recovery. Even in modern terms, smallpox is an example of a disease that shaped human history. Entire settlements, armies, and regions were affected during outbreaks. Observation, hygiene, isolation, and structured care were the tools available. Guards, caregivers, and families all contributed to these strategies. Awareness, patience, and adherence to routines were key to survival. Smallpox's story is a lesson in observation, care, and structured routines. Families and communities adapted over centuries to manage the risk. Careful attention to symptoms, separation of sick individuals, and organization of daily life were central. Guards, caregivers, and community leaders all played roles in maintaining health and preventing the spread of infection. The eradication of smallpox was a milestone in human history. Vaccination replaced the older, riskier methods. Observation, hygiene, and isolation remained relevant in managing other diseases. Historical approaches to smallpox demonstrate how structured routines, patience, and careful monitoring can reduce the impact of highly contagious diseases. Looking back at the story of smallpox, it becomes clear why this disease was so deadly for so long. Several factors contributed to its high fatality and rapid spread. First, the virus itself was highly contagious. A single infected person could pass it to many others through close contact or contaminated objects. In communities where people lived and worked closely together, such as castles, villages, or cities, this meant the disease could spread quickly. Second, the early symptoms were not specific. Fever, fatigue, and headache could be mistaken for other illnesses. By the time the characteristic rash appeared, the virus had already multiplied inside the body and could have been transmitted to others. The period when someone felt unwell but showed no outward signs made containment difficult. Observation, isolation, and structured routines were essential, but not everyone had access to effective methods or information. Third, smallpox could be severe and unpredictable. Mild cases existed, but severe cases caused widespread pustules, high fever, and complications like dehydration, secondary infections, or organ failure. Children, the elderly, and those already weakened by other conditions were at the greatest risk. The mortality rate in large outbreaks could reach 30–40%, and some communities experienced even higher losses. Fourth, medical knowledge and resources were limited for centuries. Before vaccination, there was no guaranteed cure. Care focused on observation, hydration, nutrition, and isolating the sick. Families, caregivers, and guards in castles or towns followed strict routines to reduce spread. These measures helped, but they could not fully prevent deaths. Variolation was risky, and only later did vaccination provide a reliable solution. Fifth, the social and economic context amplified the danger. Entire communities were affected during outbreaks. Loss of labor, disruption of trade, and fear of contagion could weaken populations. Families lost members, survivors carried scars, and communities faced long-term consequences. The impact of smallpox went beyond individual illness to affect daily life, productivity, and social stability. Taken together, these factors explain why smallpox was so deadly. Its contagiousness, unpredictable severity, lack of early detection, limited medical knowledge, and social consequences combined to make it one of the most feared diseases in history. Structured observation, hygiene, isolation, and later vaccination were essential tools for controlling it. But for centuries, even these measures could not prevent loss of life. Today, smallpox has been eradicated thanks to widespread vaccination. Its story remains a powerful example of the importance of disease prevention, early observation, and careful care. By studying how communities, caregivers, and guards managed smallpox in the past, we can appreciate the combination of patience, routine, and structured action that reduced its impact. It also highlights how science and public health measures can completely change the course of a deadly disease. In conclusion, smallpox was so deadly because it spread easily, caused severe illness in many, and existed in a time when medical knowledge and protective measures were limited. The virus's contagiousness, long incubation, visible rash, and unpredictability all contributed to high mortality. Communities had to rely on careful observation, isolation, hygiene, and structured routines to limit its spread, and even then, many lives were lost. Vaccination ultimately provided the solution, showing the importance of prevention and scientific advancement in overcoming a disease that once terrified the world. Thank you for joining this calm exploration of smallpox and its history. I hope this narration helped you understand why the disease was so dangerous and gave you a gentle, informative story to accompany your rest. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more calm history stories like this one. And don't forget to like and share if you found it helpful. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next journey through history.